Independence Day just around the corner, it brought to mind all the great movements and wars fought to secure the right for freedom for individual humans and such. Everyone, regardless of their race, gender, sexual identity, or political affiliation, deserves the right to have that freedom to choose how to live their life, as long as it doesn't infringe on someone else's right to be free. While we won't be getting into a political comment war here on YouTube, these films do a damn good job of showing that struggle, so we'll let them speak for themselves. Before we begin, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Every new sub helps us achieve our goal and keeps us motivated to create new content. With that being said, I'm your host, Jamie, and here are 10 films about freedom. Number 1, 12 Years a Slave. In the years leading up to the Civil War, a free black man named Solomon Northup is kidnapped from upstate New York and sold into slavery in the South. Over the course of the film, he is subjected to horrible torture and cruelty from both his menacing owner as well as other white figures who run their own plantations and work as slave wranglers. However, his luck changes somewhat when he encounters a Canadian man who is laboring on a barn named Samuel Bass, who through his own Christian faith strongly opposes slavery and holds animosity toward Edwin Epps, especially for his treatment of his slaves. When Solomon reveals he was a free man who was kidnapped, Bass puts his own safety aside to alert local law enforcement, and this results in Northup being able to return home to his family. There is nothing more American than the fight for civil rights freedoms, which have unfortunately plagued this nation for centuries, and sad to say, is still an issue to this very day. This issue goes beyond being free from a monarchy or paying taxes, but to a basic human right to simply exist and be treated like a human being. While when push comes to shove, we have made great strides to make everyone equal, we still have a long way to go. You can check out this film for yourself over on Prime, Fandango, and Apple TV. But be prepared, it is not an easy watch. Number 2, The Patriot. While many of the facts of this film are heavily disputed, it nonetheless captures the spirit of the American Revolutionary War. The English monarchy has often had troubles letting go of their territories to give these countries back their independence. And at one time in history, the United States of America was such a country as well. Back then, it wasn't a conglomerate of states, but rather a few spread out colonies who decided to band together, form their own government, and oppose British rule. A country thousands of miles away across an entire ocean that was bleeding the land dry of its resources. With the aid of the French, who already had a long history at odds with the British Empire, America was able to fight them off and eventually establish their own independence, marking the occasion by signing the historical document, the Declaration of Independence. Now, this film isn't that deeply rooted in historical moments, but rather a more personal journey following a family as they find themselves unable to stay out of the conflict and must take up sides and take up arms to defend their right to be there. It's basically Braveheart, but with more muskets. It's action-packed and features Jason Isaacs in the role of the villain you just love to hate. And you can watch it for yourself over on Tubi, AMC+, Sling TV, Prime, and Apple TV. Number 3, Amistad. Another film set around the time of American slavery. This one, however, takes more of a John Grisham approach, in that most of the film is set during a trial. A schooner by the name of La Amistad was transporting black slaves when one of the captives leads an uprising, which result in most of the crew being killed except for a pair of navigators. These navigators promise the slaves to sail them back to Africa, but instead betray them by sailing into a U.S. harbor where they are stopped by the Washington and recaptured. They are then charged with piracy and murder by U.S. State's Attorney William S. Halliburton, but those charges are dismissed as they happened in international waters. With wounded pride, a civil case is then established by Ruiz and Montes, the two navigators, who claim the slaves are their property and wish to have them returned. The Spanish government even gets involved, forcing President Martin Van Buren to direct his Secretary of State, John Forsyth, to support their claim, and a massive trial gets underway. However, abolitionist Lewis Tappan contacts former U.S. President John Quincy Adams to help fight against the government claims, and they enlist a young eccentric attorney named Roger Sherman Baldwin. The film has some intense, emotional, and empowering moments that truly depict the cry of freedom many people around the world have agonizingly felt at one time or another, and it is another perfect example of the human spirit and its right to exist. Make sure to head over to Pluto TV, Roku, Fandango, or Apple TV to check this masterpiece out. Number 4, Michael Collins. As we mentioned in a previous entry, the British monarchy has trouble letting go of its territories. This is especially true for Ireland, who still to this day vies for independence. In the early 20th century, a man named Michael Collins steps up to become the leader of the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, where they begin to plan a revolution to remove British military outposts out of their country. Unfortunately, diplomatic solutions fell on deaf ears, so the protests grew increasingly violent, with bombs being planted in homes and establishments to take out significant political figures, and weapons being smuggled in through overseas channels who supported them. To quell the violence, England agrees to a ceasefire and treaty negotiations, but it turns out it's mainly a ruse, as they don't plan on giving Ireland its full independence, but rather let them slowly establish their own government under British supervision, providing they remain under their dominion. Colin wants to revolt against this idea, but then his own party betrays him, and it all leads to a huge, disastrous event that will forever scar the relations between the two nations. With amazing acting and a beautiful score, this film, along with another classic, Rob Roy, are must-watches. So head over to Tubi, Roku, Prime, or Fandango to check it out. Number 5, The Matrix. Not all great films about freedom are based in reality. In this film, humanity developed free-thinking AI, something that in today's world is not so far-fetched anymore. And just like Terminator, that AI rebelled and in a short time took over humanity and enslaved them, placing them in cocoon-like pods, which then feed off their bioelectric energy to provide a sort of battery for themselves. The people are jacked into a full virtual program known as the Matrix, which allows them to live a life of ignorance. However, certain individuals who question the world around them have found the ability to wake themselves up from the digital dream and find themselves in a horrifying reality of their true circumstances. They band together in an effort to wake up the rest of humanity in hopes of one day stopping the machines and gaining their freedom back. At the time this film was released, the internet was still a baby. People were still figuring out what they could do with it besides sending emails and selling pornography. So a lot of technical aspects of the film don't really hold up. But otherwise, this film surprisingly is still pretty relevant. Whatever you may think of the sequels and that complete letdown of an ending, this film has withstood the test of time and still oozes all the black leather techno cool it blasted our senses with back in 1999. So head over to Netflix, Fandango, Prime, or Apple TV to check it out. Number 6, Independence Day. It's in the title, right? The concept is simple. A race of superior alien being travels across a galaxy and stops at our little blue marble to eradicate us so they can scoop up our resources for their intergalactic campaign for dominance. We are outmatched, outgunned, and basically out of luck. That is until a brave pilot and a nerd with a Windows 95 laptop figure out a way to disable their shield so we stand a fighting chance. This film had it all. A stellar cast, each with their own unique personalities. Badass special effects that still hold up pretty well to this date. And non-stop action that will keep you at the edge of your seat, cheering your favorite heroes on in their many victories. Nothing screams the freedom to exist more than fighting back against some foreign tyrannical desolators to stop a genocidal campaign. Now, this sadly doesn't extend to the sequel, which was just a poor excuse cash grab attempt to hone in on nostalgia and promise over-the-top mind-blowing action, and it turned out to be just a bunch of CGI nonsense with uninteresting characters and random cameos. But if you want a more thrilling version of War of the Worlds, you can't go wrong with Independence Day. So head over to Hulu, Sling TV, Prime, or Fandango to see it in all its glory. Number 7, Gandhi. While Ben Kingsley absolutely nailed the role of Mahatma Gandhi, after watching the epic rap battle featuring Keegan-Michael Key as the titular revolutionary, his face is the first one I think of when I hear the name. The film, though, is a sweeping, epic, brilliantly written, and fantastically filmed to depict the life of the peaceful leader as he led the independence movement against the British Empire during the 20th century. It covers most of his life, starting with a defining moment in 1893, where he is thrown off a train for being in a whites-only compartment, all the way through his assassination and funeral in 1948. What separates him from so many revolutionaries was his determination to get results without violence, and to show the world there is a better and more civilized way to grow and establish diplomacy. Too much negotiation and treaties have been forged at the end of a gun, especially in the shadow of World War II. And so it is remarkable that he stuck to his principles throughout, never wavering or faltering. At one point, there is sort of a civil war-esque split in India between the Hindus and Muslims, which erupt into significant violence, to which Gandhi responds by initiating a hunger strike, a movement so powerful that it does eventually cease hostilities. You can find this breathtaking film over on Prime, Fandango, or Apple TV. Number 8, Selma. Another great leader who also opposed violence and instead sought to revolutionize the civil rights movement through peaceful demonstrations and diplomatic discussion, and was sadly assassinated by hate-filled racists who wanted to keep the world segregated. This film mainly focuses on the march through Selma, Alabama by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and ending with significant change in legislature for voting rights of non-white citizens. Freedom comes in many forms. Sometimes it's simply just the right to participate in a function that oversees your rights as a citizen, which at the time, persons of color did not count as a full individual when it came to voting for government officials, or new laws, or in other cases. Those votes were discarded or manipulated to serve white majority interests. While voting rights were eventually made equal across all states for all persons, Unfortunately, the fight for other civil rights is still an ongoing issue today and will likely continue for this foreseeable future until many old beliefs are finally quashed. Head over to Paramount Plus, Prime, Sling TV, or MGM Plus to check this wonderful film out.
Hey folks, sorry to interrupt, but we just launched our very own merch store at fatninja.shop. We sell everything from t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, and more, so we would greatly appreciate it if you checked it out. All the proceeds go to our future projects, so it helps us make any kind of movies and short films that we want to make in the future. So if you got time, check out fatninja.shop. Thanks again, and back to the video.
Number 9, Malcolm X. Almost like a mirror image to Dr. King, Malcolm X fought for the same things as he did, but believed that the only way to attain them was through force. This ultimately resulted in him also being assassinated, but by his own co-conspirators, as they wanted to seek a less violent path going forward. After his stint in prison, Malcolm X became a devout follower of the Nation of Islam. But after some disparaging remarks about the assassination of John F. Kennedy and his disillusionment of Muslim belief during his pilgrimage to Mecca, where he encountered Muslims of all races, including white, he tried establishing his own community with the Organization of Afro-American Unity, which angered the Nation of Islam, and this is what triggered his downfall. Tragically, just a few years later after his death, civil rights leader Fred Hampton and Martin Luther King were also assassinated, almost completely halting the movement. That is, until it had an unexpected turn in the masses, who sympathized with the deaths and their surviving families, and began to join the protests, otherwise known as the hippie movement. Hippies were a thing beforehand, but through these deaths were more unified than ever to take on the government, especially during the Vietnam War era, which forced the government to sort of clean house and make significant changes in legislature. Say what you will about the methods some of these activist leaders employed. Without their courage to stand up against tyranny, the progress we have made so far wouldn't have come to pass. You can find this film over on Tubi, Fandango, Prime, and Apple TV. Number 10, Schindler's List. Set in Krakow, Poland during World War II, industrialist Oskar Schindler arrives on the scene to make his fortune by using Polish Jews as laborers in a factory to produce enamelware. As long as these Jews were deemed essential to the German war effort, they would be allowed to stay in Poland and work instead of being shipped off to concentration camps. Albeit, the conditions were not much better in the ghettos. As the year goes on, Schindler becomes quite wealthy and maintains friendly relations with the Nazis. That is, until the arrival of Amon Goth, who plans to build a massive concentration camp in the area and liquidate the ghettos. Roughly 2,000 are sent to the camp, while another 2,000 are simply exterminated, all while Schindler himself witnesses. And it leaves him feeling decimated. Through bribery, Schindler desperately holds on to his relationship with the Nazis, but secretly, he begins to plan to save as many lives as possible from horrendous fates. The emotional roller coaster journey from then on grows ever so more dour as the war reaches its height. And when Germany finally surrenders, the ending will leave you sobbing in the fetal position. Shot in an epic visual splendor with a haunting score, this is a must-see for World War II enthusiasts. So head over to Prime, Fandango, or Apple TV to check it out. Thanks for checking out the video. Did we leave any films off the list? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to tap that bell icon to stay up to date with our latest releases. You can reach out to us on Twitter or X at Studios Fat, or chat with us on Discord, linked below. Make sure to check out our very own merch store located at fatninja.shop. All proceeds go towards our future film projects, so we greatly appreciate it. I've been your host, Jamie. Thanks again. Take care.